Welcome back to the show. Now joined by head football coach Chip Kelly. And Coach, first of all, belated congratulations on the championship, third consecutive conference championship for you and your team. And just curious, growing up in the Northeast, what was it like for you? I mean, what did you view the Rose Bowl as?
It was the same thing because it was the game on New Year's Day. And that was way back when every game was played on New Year's Day. That was relevant. Then they started to move them to the second and the third and the fifth and whatnot. But when you had that span of football, it kind of culminated with that, and especially when I was a younger kid, the late game was the Orange Bowl, but I was usually asleep by that time because 3-hour time difference. So the Rose Bowl starting at 5 o'clock on, and so it was the prime time game on New Year's Day. And whether it was watching Tyrone Wheatley run or some of the old Washington teams, or seeing all those other teams play in the Rose Bowl. I remember the '94 game when Oregon was playing Penn State. So it still is the game, the New Year's Day game. So.
Tough opener with LSU, of which played well enough to win that game, a few turnovers here and there. But what I like about what this team did, and I know what you guys love about what this team did, is they put that behind them and reeled off 9 wins in a row, a really resilient group that knows how to handle that type of situation.
It does, and I think it's our approach to everything. Whether you win or lose on Saturday, you got to be able to move forward and start focusing on the next opponent. And we truly take each game as a week, and how do we prepare for that week. And we played when you look back on it, an outstanding LSU team that ended up being the #1 team in the country and is playing in the national championship. Against a good team like that, you can't make mistakes like that and expect to win football games.
And so when you reel off the rest of those wins during the season and go to the conference championship game and win that game, you found out a lot about this team during that season. I think one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is how important it was to find out in the middle of the season that it's more than about 1 or 2 or 3 players.
Yeah. And that's the one thing. Going into this season, my biggest question mark was our youth and how will we respond. When you lose the Males and the Matthews and the Pacingers and the Bears and the Talmadge Jacksons and the Drew Davises and those 3 linemen up front, the list goes on and on. There were so many kids that took us to that national championship game, 23, 24 seniors, and they're gone. And then we got a group coming back that's got 10, 11 guys in it, upperclassmen. A lot of younger guys, and when I say younger guys like Michael and Darren and Kenyon and guys that have played a lot of football for us, but still, those guys are only juniors. So that small senior class, that's a question mark for any coach. How are we going to handle things? And obviously, losing in our opening game, but I kind of got a good feeling about this team that Monday after the LSU game of, hey, we lost. What do we got to do to correct it? What are our teachable moments from that game as we move forward and go on to play? I think it was Nevada was the next game, and I can't. They all kind of run together. I think it was Nevada was the next game. How we come out, and Nevada was a team that was a 13-1 team the year before, had not played a game yet. So we were their opening game, and you really didn't know what they were going to be like. And then, to win that game 69-21, everybody contributed, and you're starting to see DeAnthony starting to come into a role. You grow from playing the LSUs, and that's why we like playing games like that. You'll grow from that experience. And as we tell our guys all the time, is don't let that team beat you twice. Don't think so much about the game last week that it affects how you play this week. And I think our guys figured that out. And as the season went along, you face some different situations. LaMichael goes down, Darren goes down. But, it was just how things fell out. I think when LaMichael went down in the Cal game, we played Arizona State next. We're losing a running back that averages 171 yards a game rushing. And Kenyon Barner plays in the game and rushes for 170 yards on the dot. And it was just kind of after the game, they're like, Kenyon rushed for 170. And I was like, we had to replace 171. That was interesting. So it was just, we knew that these other guys had the ability to play, but you don't really know until they get into a game. You see it in practice and you have some confidence going into a game, but when you actually see it kind of open up in front of your eyes, you felt like you had a pretty good deal. And the same thing in Brian's situation. When Brian had an opportunity to go in a game, he didn't miss a beat. And that's the one. I had a lot of confidence in Kenyon. Kenyon's played a ton of football here. He was our offensive MVP in the Rose Bowl 2 years ago when we were down there against Ohio State. So that one wasn't as big a question mark as just how's Brian going to respond. Brian had played in the end of the Nevada game, played in the Missouri State game, but hadn't played when it was a significant situation like it was when he came off the bench in the Arizona State game. But you just watch him play with poise and understand what we ask our quarterbacks to do is you don't have to make it happen, you just have to let it happen as things came. He started to gain some confidence, and that's when I knew we may have a pretty good team here.
Yeah, and one last thing before we move on to the Wisconsin game and the Rose Bowl. was going to stay on the same theme, and that is some of those other young guys. You look on the defensive side of the ball with Hill and Terrence Mitchell and maybe role players like DeWitt Stuckey, guys that really emerged as the season went on or were forced to play and forced to grow up in a hurry.
Yeah, I think Stuck is probably the one guy when you look at it, at what this program's all about, because DeWitt's a great football player, but he was behind Casey Matthews and Spencer Pasinger for 3 years here. And there was no question that those were the guys. And then you also throw Michael Clay and Kiko Alonso in that mix. And so DeWitt's playing, but he's not playing full time, and he's really a valuable special teams for us. And then he gets thrown into the opening game against LSU, and now you're going to be a starter, and it's your senior year. How are you going to respond? And how he responded, maybe our most consistent player on the defensive side of the ball for the whole year. And it's the same thing in the corner situation. When you see what, Anthony Gilden, we lost him for a couple of games during the season. Obviously, Cliff was gone. How does Troy Hill, Terrence Mitchell as redshirt freshman respond? And then Efo. And how does Efo do as a true freshman? But those are things you kind of coming out of camp. I know John Neal and Nick were excited about our depth in the secondary. I don't think they thought we're going to just be playing the three freshmen, losing Cliff and losing Anthony. But those guys responded, and they got better as the season went along. And I've been in programs where it's senior heavy, and when you have seniors, you're good. And when you don't have seniors, we'll wait till when we have that big senior class. But I think you're setting yourself up for disaster, and you're kind of mailing a season in, saying we have a small senior class, we're not going to be good. We went into this season with 43 or 44 red or true freshmen or redshirt freshmen. That was the reality before the season started. We're going to use it as an excuse, or are we just going to say, hey, when you get your opportunity to play, go play? And that's what this group has done. And we talk about it all the time. Pick your head up in December, and we'll see where we are. And we got the opportunity to pick our head up in December, and we were the conference champions, and we get to represent this school in the Rose Bowl.
All right, well, we've had a chance to look back. Now it's time to look forward to the Rose Bowl. Oregon's opponent, Wisconsin, on January 2nd in Pasadena. We'll be back with more after this. Welcome back to the show. It's the 98th Rose Bowl in Pasadena, January 2nd. Coach, Wisconsin, very solid on offense, very good on offense, very solid on defense. We're going to start with the offensive side of the ball. And, I look statistically at some of the stats, first downs, points per game, total points on the season. A lot of similarities when you look at those two teams at Oregon and we look at Wisconsin, but how they got there and how they run their offenses, Wisconsin's offense versus your offense, a lot different.
It is different, and it was a great point. I think we're third in the country in scoring, and they're fourth in this country in scoring. And we average 46 a game, and they average 46 and change, average 44 and change. But when you look at them offensively, it's a different setup. They're a power running team, extremely balanced. So they average 237 yards a game rushing. They average 229 yards a game passing. So usually when you look at games, you're saying, hey, let's try to make this team play left-handed. And by that, you'd say, let's take away their strength and then force them to do something they don't want to do. So if you're playing a great running team, hey, let's pack the box, and let's just dare them to kind of throw the ball on you. But you got a team that can throw the ball. Or other teams that throw the heck out of the ball. Hey, let's play coverage all day long and see if they want to try to run it on us. But with that balance, and you don't see it that often. I mean, to be within 8 yards over the course of 13 games, to be within 8 yards rushing, passing in a game, really tells you that it's a complete football team. They've got an outstanding offensive line, very, very, very big. Their tradition of playing I formation football, and that your mentality of what Big Ten football is what Wisconsin is. And then you have a tailback that is as productive a football player that there's ever been in college football, and not just this season, but when you see that he had 38 touchdowns, and the record's 39 by Barry Sanders. In the history of the game, he's second. You kind of take a step back, and he had 1,700-yard rushing, but he can catch the ball coming out of the backfield. And unfortunately, as you watch the tape and start to break things down, he can throw the ball. He's thrown 2 passes and completed them to Russell Wilson. So you add Russell Wilson to the mix, who leads the country or second in the country in pass efficiency, and just huge numbers, 70% completion percentage. I think 31 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, but also can beat you with his feet. You wish you had a quarterback that, well, all right, we're going to play a guy, it's an I formation team, but we can get after them because this kid's not mobile. This kid is mobile, and if you force him to run, he can beat you with his feet. So we expect that, though. When you get into a BCS game, you're not going to look at the tape and say, we got these guys. This is a piece of cake. It's going to be a huge challenge, but it's interesting how they do things offensively. I really like watching what they do. I'm a big fan of what they do. It's diametrically opposed to what we do, but it still works. When you look at their numbers compared to our numbers, they're a grind them out, smash, take long drives, wear people down from that standpoint.
And yet can go deep if they need to.
And they do. You put Toon out wide, who's 50-something catch guy, and a very, very productive receiver. They got a great possession receiver in Abadera. So they've got components. Their tight end, Peterson, is a great tight end. There's no holes when you look at them offensively. And you almost, if you're a competitor, you look at that, you love the challenge. It's hey, we're getting to play in the Rose Bowl against an outstanding opponent. There are really no holes, so it's going to be a great chess match between their offense and our defense.
And then you switch to the other side of the ball, and their defense looks like a very well-coached, very sound defense, but a couple of linebackers that stick out.
They're both, Taylor and Borland are both in the top 11 in the nation in tackles. Both of them average over 10 tackles a game. They do a great job in space, and a lot of teams, I think you see a lot more situational football in our league. It's third down, let's bring in the nickel linebackers. Those guys are on the field the entire game. It's a stout 4-3 defense, very physical up front. They don't present a whole heck of a lot of looks, but the looks that they give you, they execute, and they know where to be. And I think when you run that style defense, obviously, number one, you have to have personnel to do that. But number two, you can spend a lot of time in them just showing the other team's offense, because you're not putting in an elaborate game plan, but you're now diagnosing plays and how do they react. And when you watch Borland on tape specifically, he always seems to be in the right place at the right time, and just kind of an uncanny ability to hit a gap on a blitz, or then the next play scrape over the top and be, wherever the ball is, you're going to see number 44 there. But you're looking at a team that's I think 6th in scoring defense and 8th in total defense in the nation. So again, similar to where they are offensively, not a lot of holes.
The margin is so razor thin, whether it's turnovers here or there, that type of deal. But we haven't talked special teams. Special teams potentially a big difference in this game.
Yeah, and I think whenever you get into big games, it is. I talk about it in league pay, and I always say it comes down to two things: turnovers and special teams, and how well can we execute on the special teams, and can we change the field dynamic, and get the ball on our return game into some positive yardage so that we can play on a shorter field, and then can we pin them in our game, and what Jackson Rice, the weapon we have in him, and how many times we've made the defense try to the opponent offense drive the field on us because we can pin people down deep with the way Jackson kicks, or how well are we covering kickoffs. Those are the things that I think when you get into big games, that turnover battle, obviously, which we saw in the first game of the year, and then special teams. But when you're going to play in a BCS game, you're going to play the best, and there's not going to be holes. And if that's what you get excited about if you're a competitor. You want to play in games like this. You don't want to find out that you're playing in the Joe Jackson Bowl in Casper, Wyoming against some team from a lower conference, and it's like we're 30-point favorites. That's not fun. That's not what it's all about. This is why our kids have had a great week of preparation, or 2 weeks of preparation up until this, because they're excited about the challenge of playing in the game. And it's not as much as, I haven't heard one kid say, hey, we're going to Los Angeles, we get to go to Disneyland, we get to do anything. We get to play Wisconsin, and it's going to be a huge test for us, and our guys are excited about that.
Well, as you said, challenge, but with challenge comes opportunity. So, Coach, best of luck to you and your team in the Rose Bowl, and thanks again for taking the time to join us.
No problem. Happy holidays, Duck fans.